My dad told me there wasn't enough room at Christmas, yet I watched strangers raise glasses in my parents' house while my kids sat home asking why they weren't wanted. I'll never forget their faces. My dad's voice was flat when he called. No warm-up, no small talk, not even a, "How are the kids?" Just straight to it. "This year's gotten a little crowded. Maybe you and the kids sit it out." I swallowed hard, forced my voice steady, and said, "No problem." Hung up before he could hear the tremor in my hands as I set the phone down. The living room still smelled like wrapping paper and scotch tape. We just finished packing their anniversary gifts. Their 30th, months of saving in secret, stashing a little here and there so the kids wouldn't notice. A Cartier watch, engraved. Something special. Something that was supposed to finally mean something. Instead, I sat in silence, my heart pounding in my ears. I told the kids we'd do our own thing, said it like it was some big treat. Ordered their favorite pizza. Bought extra marshmallows for Coco. Smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. My son asked if Grandpa was sick. My daughter wanted to know if Grandma was mad. I lied. I told them no, nothing like that, just a change of plans. I laughed it off like it was nothing, but inside? Inside I felt like someone had ripped open stitches I'd spent years sewing shut. Because this wasn't new. I'd excused it all before, the missed birthdays, the forgotten names, the way they always made us feel like guests at their table instead of family. I twisted myself into knots convincing myself they were just old-fashioned, just distracted, just not expressive. And every time, I still showed up. With gifts, with casseroles, with gas in my tank and kids dressed up just for Grandma. But then, 2 days later, my daughter came into the kitchen, phone in hand. "Mom," she whispered, "look." It was an Instagram story. Clear as daylight. Balloons. Flowers. A catered spread. Their house transformed into a party hall. My cousin's college friends were there. Her boss. Even the toddler from across the street, the same one who once spit on our porch. And right in the center of it all, my parents. My mom laughing, wearing the scarf I bought her last Christmas. My dad holding a glass of champagne like he was king of the world. My daughter stared at the screen for a long time before asking, why didn't they want us there? And I had no answer. None. I walked to the living room, grabbed my phone, and snapped a picture of the wrapped gifts under the side table, the ones the kids had carefully picked out and helped wrap. I sent the photo to my dad. No caption. A minute later, a follow-up, dropping these off at Goodwill. Then I put the phone down. Didn't wait. Didn't expect anything. But 40 minutes later, there he was. Breathless, pacing outside my front door, jacket half on, no car in sight. Must have parked down the street so no one would see. That's the kind of man he is, more embarrassed about appearances than ashamed of the truth. I opened the door but didn't move aside. Cold air slipped between us. He looked winded, like he'd run the whole way. "We need to talk," he said, trying to sound firm. I just stared at him. "What are you doing here?" My voice was low, controlled. I wasn't his daughter in that moment. I was a mother who had run out of patience. He started fast talking. Said the party got bigger than expected, that my cousin handled the invites. Claimed it wasn't about excluding us, that it just happened. He even said we could come by for cake that weekend. As if my daughter hadn't already seen him give a toast without her. As if my son hadn't already asked why Grandpa didn't want his drawing. I bit my tongue before I exploded. Finally, I asked, "The toddler from next door made the list?" He looked down at the ground. Mumbled about how it wasn't personal. Told me I was being dramatic. Said we always take things too far. We. Like my kids and I were just one blurry inconvenience he could lump together and dismiss. So I told him about the watch. About the months I'd spent cutting back, picking up shifts, saying no to things my kids wanted, all to buy them something meaningful. I didn't want pity, I wanted him to feel it. To know I gave him something real, and he gave us nothing. He went quiet. That heavy, telling quiet that makes your chest sink because you know the apology isn't coming. And finally, he spoke. "You didn't have to do all that. Not thank you. Not I'm sorry." Just a reminder that in his eyes, everything I ever do is unnecessary. And then, my daughter padded into the hallway in socks, clutching a gift bag. Inside was the mug she'd made in art class for my mom. She looked up at me, then at him, and asked, "Is Grandpa here to take the gifts now?" My dad froze. Didn't kneel down. Didn't hug her. Didn't even say hi. Just stared, like she'd caught him in something shameful. I told her, no, he's not taking anything. And I closed the door. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there, still and small, before finally walking off down the driveway. No knock, no apology. Just a man more worried about the neighbors seeing than about the daughter and grandchildren he'd cast aside. And that's the moment it hit me, he'd never been ashamed of the way he treated us. Only of being seen doing it. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. A wall of text from my mom. She said I had crossed a line. That I blew everything out of proportion. That my tone was completely inappropriate and I'd hurt their feelings. And then came the part that stuck with me all day, maybe it's better if we take some time away from each other. Not once, not one single mention of the kids. That silence was louder than anything she wrote. And in that moment, my decision was made. I pulled the Cartier watch out of its velvet box. The gift I'd spent months saving for, pinching pennies, cutting corners. Drove straight to the store and asked for a return. The associate frowned at the engraving, but after some back and forth, I got most of the money back. Enough to finally fix the water heater. Enough to maybe take the kids somewhere fun for the weekend. They didn't want our gifts? Fine. They would never get another thing from us again. I expected quiet after that. That's their pattern: pull away, let the silence rot me from the inside, wait until I crack and let them slide back and like nothing happened. But this time, I held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe they'd actually think about what they'd done. Maybe they'd check on the kids. Maybe, just maybe, they'd say sorry. 4 days later, my phone lit up. A message from my dad. No apology. No check-in. Just 6 flat words: "Are you still sending the mortgage this month?" No punctuation, no softness. Just an expectation. I stared at the screen like I couldn't make sense of the letters. Like my brain refused to accept that after everything, this is what he thought was important. For months, quietly, without telling the kids, without even telling my friends, I'd been paying their mortgage. Not because they asked directly, but because of the comments. The sighs about tight months. The grumbles about bad timing. The subtle hints about how everyone's feeling the squeeze. I thought I was doing what family does, showing up even when it hurts, even when it isn't returned. That evening, another message pinged. This time from my mom, just checking to make sure the mortgage didn't get delayed. "We need the payment in by Friday." As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't stood in my own doorway explaining to my daughter why her grandparents didn't want her gifts. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my banking app, at the little cushion I'd been carving out month after month just to keep them afloat. And that's when it hit me: it wasn't just help. It had become automatic. Expected. Like I wasn't their daughter anymore, just a paycheck with legs. So I texted back, "No, I won't be sending it anymore." No explanation. No excuses. Just a wall they couldn't climb. The phone rang immediately. I let it buzz until it stopped. Then came the flood of messages from my mom. Why was I suddenly changing things? Why was I bringing money into personal matters? How could I be so cruel over one misunderstanding? She even threw the kids into it. Think about how this affects them. As if she hadn't erased them herself 2 weeks earlier. I didn't reply. The next morning, my dad tried a different angle. A longer message, talking about how he didn't think I'd take it this far, how they never meant to hurt anyone, how I should be the bigger person. I deleted it halfway through. That week, I sat down with my budget for the first time in months without feeling that weight. I canceled every automatic transfer. Redirected every penny back into my savings. And for once, I didn't have to juggle bills to cover someone else's life. I bought my son new sneakers. Ordered the book series my daughter had been begging for. Cooked dinners without whispering prices in my head. It was the smallest, quietest kind of freedom, and it tasted sweeter than anything I'd felt in years. I thought maybe now they'd back off. That silence would finally settle over the mess. But I was wrong. 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't them. It was the school. My daughter's teacher. Her voice was calm, but careful, each word chosen like she was walking a tightrope. "Hi, Samantha. I just wanted to let you know, your mom came by the school this morning." I went cold. My hand tightened around the phone. She explained how my mom had walked into the front office carrying a little package. Said she was just dropping something off for her granddaughter. At first, it seemed harmless. But then, she asked to see her. When the staff said no, that it wasn't allowed without prior approval, she didn't leave. She argued. Said she was just a grandmother, not a stranger. Said she had a right to see her. She didn't raise her voice, but she pushed. Hard. And only when they refused again did she finally leave, but not before forcing the package into their hands. I was at the school in 20 minutes. The receptionist handed me the box, already opened for safety. The paper was familiar, our wrapping paper, the exact pattern we'd used on the gifts my parents had rejected. Inside was the ceramic mug my daughter had made in art class. Bright red, painted with a crooked sunflower and the words "Love you Grandma" scrawled in shaky gold. And taped to the bottom, a torn piece of notepad paper. "I didn't mean for things to get this far. You're being unreasonable. The kids should be allowed to decide for themselves." No apology. No regret. Just guilt, gift-wrapped and shoved through the boundaries I had drawn. I walked back to the car clutching that box, my chest heavy with something that felt like sickness. It wasn't just manipulation anymore, it was invasion. She had gone around me. Straight to my daughter. That night, I didn't tell my daughter the truth. I said Grandma had dropped off something she forgot to give us. She nodded, but I could see the quiet settle over her like a shadow. Barely touched her dinner. Sat through the movie without laughing once. Kids always know. After I tucked them in, I typed the message with shaking hands: "Do not go near the school again. If you want to talk, reach out to me. Otherwise, stay away. This is a boundary. Respect it." The reply didn't come from my mom. It came from my dad. "If you think you're cutting us off and keeping our grandkids, you've got another thing coming." I read it twice. Took a screenshot. Emailed it to myself. Forwarded it to a lawyer friend with the subject line, "Just in case." I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my filing cabinet, pulled out every scrap of proof I had, mortgage receipts, bank transfers, texts dripping with hints. I printed them, labeled them, slid them into a folder. I never thought I'd need this kind of backup. But that text wasn't a plea. It was a threat. And that's when something inside me shifted. I stopped being afraid of what cutting them off might look like. Because in that moment, I realized, I was already free. 5 days passed after my mom showed up at the school. 5 days of silence. No texts. No calls. Not even one of those fake casual messages they usually send when they're trying to wiggle their way back in. Just a thick, dragging quiet that pressed down on the house like humidity before a storm. And then Saturday came. The knock wasn't loud. Not frantic. Just 3 solid taps on the door, calm, deliberate, almost rehearsed. I froze for a second before looking through the peephole. There they were. My parents. My mom clutched a folder to her chest, her jaw set tight. My dad stood stiff behind her, posture straight, eyes hard. It didn't look like they came to apologize. It looked like they came to negotiate. I didn't open the door right away. First, I climbed the stairs and turned the TV on in the kids' room. I knelt down, looked them in the eye, and told them to stay put. Don't open the door, no matter what. They nodded, wide-eyed, and I closed the door gently behind me. Then I went back down. Stepped outside. Pulled the door shut behind me like a shield. No hello. No small talk. My dad's voice cut straight through the cold air. We came to talk. We need to fix this before things get ugly. Not a plea. A warning. I didn't answer. Just stared. My mom stepped forward and held out the folder. Inside were 2 envelopes, each with my kids' names written on the front in her sharp, careful handwriting. She said they were letters, just to explain our side of things. Claimed they didn't want the kids thinking they'd been abandoned. I told her flat out, they had no right to go around me, to send anything directly to my children. What happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. A choice. Years of choices. That's when she said it. The words that made my stomach twist. We didn't think you'd actually go through with this. You always forgive. And just like that, it clicked. That's why they pushed. That's why they tested. They believed I would always bend. That no matter what, I'd come crawling back with an apology casserole, kids in tow, like nothing happened. They counted on me being soft. My dad finally spoke again, his voice clipped and low. We've been under pressure. The mortgage is behind again. If you're really cutting that off, it's going to destroy us. And there it was. The real reason they showed up. Not the kids. Not reconciliation. Not love. Money. I met his eyes. You'll figure it out. Just like I have. He blinked, like the words didn't compute. Then his tone turned bitter, defensive, the way it always did when control slipped from his hands. You're punishing your own parents over a party. Do you know how ridiculous that is? I laughed once. Sharp. Dry. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe they were still trying to spin it. This isn't about a party. It's about a lifetime. They didn't slam the door when they left. Didn't scream. Just turned, lips pressed tight, and walked back to their car without looking over their shoulders. That night, at exactly 9:03 p.m., my mom's text came through. You've made your decision. I hope you're proud. We won't be reaching out again. Don't contact us unless it's an emergency. I stared at the words. And the strangest thing happened, it didn't hurt. Not the way I thought it would. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. But I did feel something loosen inside me. Something old. Something I'd been clutching for years without realizing it. Later, when I tucked the kids in, my daughter wrapped her arms around me. She whispered, even if they don't come back, we're okay. We have you. My son, half asleep, mumbled, we have the funhouse now. I kissed their foreheads and turned off the light. And they were right. We were okay. It's been just over 3 weeks since that final message. Since they drew their line in the sand and told me not to contact them unless it was an emergency. Not a word since. No surprise calls. No vague, just checking in, texts. No cards for the kids. Just, nothing. At first, the silence felt strange. Like something was missing. Not them, exactly, just the constant noise I'd grown used to. The tension, the waiting for the next jab dressed up as concern. Without it, the quiet felt like walking through an old house you used to live in, empty, but heavy with memories. I've had to remind myself daily, this isn't loneliness. This isn't punishment. This is peace. And the kids? They adjusted faster than I did. Maybe because they'd already half let go before I even noticed. My daughter's been writing little stories and taping them to her wall, adventures about a girl and her magical dog who can travel through time. The other night, she told me the girl always wins because she remembers who she is, even when people lie to her. My son built a fort in the living room out of blankets and chairs. He calls it the no sad people zone. They eat snacks in there, watch old cartoons, laugh until they can't breathe. Every time I peek inside, I feel this wave of relief. They didn't let the bitterness take root. They still believe in good things. A few nights ago, while digging through the closet, I found a bag I'd missed. One of the gifts we'd wrapped before everything fell apart. Inside was a picture frame my daughter had decorated with tiny foam hearts. Inside it was a photo of the 4 of us from 2 years ago, back when things still felt salvageable. On the back, she'd glued a note, for Grandma and Grandpa's anniversary. Please don't cry. I sat on the floor holding that frame for a long time. Not crying. Just sitting with it. Because it was never just about that one party. It was about years. Years of being sidelined. Years of being useful but never seen. Years of showing up with kids and hope in hand, only to leave feeling like I'd crashed someone else's holiday. And the truth is, if I hadn't pulled away this time, they would have let it happen again. And again. And again. They're not staying silent because they miss us. They're staying silent because they lost control. And I finally stopped being the daughter who swallowed it all and smiled. And that's not the version of me they ever knew how to love. It still stings sometimes. There are these fleeting moments when my thumb hovers over the screen, ready to send a picture of the kids playing in the snow, or a silly video they'd laugh at, or an invite to one of their birthdays. For half a heartbeat, I almost do it. And then I stop. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. But because I remember what happened when they had their chance. They turned their backs. They shut the door. And now they walk around like they're the ones carrying the wound, like I'm the villain who made things this way. So this is where it stands. I can't promise anything. I don't know what will happen next year, or the year after that. Maybe they'll reach out when the walls really close in, or maybe they'll let their pride dig the grave for what little relationship we had left. I don't have that answer. But I do know this, if they ever want to come back, it won't be through the same door they walked away from. It'll have to be different. It'll have to be real. Or not at all. For now, it's just me and the kids. Pizza nights that end with us laughing too hard at silly movies. Saturdays where we stay in pajamas all day, turning the living room into a fort city. Homemade decorations, music cranked up too loud, cookies that are always just a little too burnt around the edges. It's not perfect. But it's ours. It's real. So maybe this is the last update. Or maybe it isn't. Life has a way of surprising you. Either way, thank you for listening. We're okay now. Truly okay. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel guilty saying that out loud. Not even a little.